right, what's going on, y'all? How's it going? I'm AC. Welcome back to AC Toy Design. This is episode 109, I believe, of my You Like Toys Patreon podcast. I probably won't, let's see, we'll go to 110 and I'll give the precursor warning or whatever, heads up, of what actually is going on here. So 6 episodes exclusively on Patreon, and the podcast is like traditionally a Q&A, and still is, and sort of a housekeeping kind of thing and announcements and whatever. But up until 105 or 106, it was exclusively on Patreon, which it still is on there, except it's also on YouTube now. And it's still, though, exclusive. The questions for the Q&A, only Patreon members can ask questions for the Q&A, and anything goes, and my patrons are always interactive and awesome. And this channel would not be going the way that it is, and my other channel, AC Draw Stuff, my illustration tutorial channel, would not be the way that it is without my Patreons. It would not be happening at all. And so thank you guys so much. And I'm constantly flattered and in awe of that community and my friends that join it, and then friends, and then patrons that have become friends, you know, two-way street there and all this stuff. It's amazing. The other day I got to hang out with my friend Reese Porter, who is a friend from Oh Yeah Comics in Skokie, where my brother works. And he joined the Patreon recently within the last few months. I got to hang out with Reese the other day, and it was great. And it's just so cool to have, like, whether they're friends, people are friends from outside of Patreon that come into Patreon, or people in Patreon that I meet and we become friends in real life. It's just amazing. I love that community so much. So thank you guys very much. Reese, it was awesome, and I posted a exclusive post on the Patreon with some photos of Reese and I and my dog Egoon, and who's MIA right now. Usually he's right next to me. And some stuff that I picked up in our day that we spent together. We got lunch, we went to a few comic book stores, toy store, and just kind of hung out in my neighborhood here. So it was a blast. Thank you, Reese, again. And thank you, Patreon, again. If you guys are interested in joining the Patreon, it's the best way to support this channel, my art, cool people that you enjoy, that create things that you enjoy, like myself. And if you don't join my Patreon, which you should, join someone else's Patreon. You know, for as little as $2 a month, you can get, you know, access to the Q&A here that we're doing, which I'm going to get to pretty quickly. Behind the scenes tutorials, work in progresses, giveaways, all kinds of stuff is on there. My Patreon members get to see my sales first for my shop, and they also get a discount and all that stuff. So the other thing that I'm trying to do right now, I want to give an apology if there's some noise going on in the background. Currently it's like 10 o'clock p.m. I'm in Chicago. It's 100 degrees outside. Very pleasant, unpleasant, sweaty, humid, 100 degrees. It's been that way for 3 days, and from what it looks like, it's going to be like that for about a month and a half, which is just not what I enjoy. But so I've got my AC unit running. I've got 2 fans running, and I'm pretty sure my mic, this mic or this mic, who knows? I've got 2 mics going. One or both are probably going to pick up some noise, so I apologize for that. But it's 100 outside, it's 82 degrees inside, which is still pretty hot. So I can't shut off my AC unit, unfortunately. And I have 2 dogs and a cat in here with me that I'm trying to keep cool. So what else? Oh, the 2 mics. So I got my lapel mic that I usually use for the YouTube videos, but then I'm using my podcast mic as well. And the reason for that is because a lot of Patreon members for this podcast, before I turned it to video, were used to only having it on audio and listening to it on the go when they drive to work. I got so many comments that were like, I love listening to it on the drive to work and this and that. And I didn't want to take that away, and I hate that the last 2 episodes were only video. So I hope you guys still enjoyed them. But from this one going forward, assuming this all works and doesn't like create some weird feedback loop or something, this mic is recording the podcast, just audio, which will be posted in the Patreon post with this video, which will also be accessible on YouTube. So in the Patreon post, you get this video and you get the audio, and you can listen to whichever one you want, because with the audio you can download it, and it's great. Patreon's great. So that's what's going on. Before I get to the questions, which I have a bunch of great questions, like a bunch, it's awesome. I wanted to share a pickup. I found this guy really cheap and he's awesome. So I'm a huge Transformers fan. Oh, Dungeons and Dragons, by the way, my favorite Saturday morning cartoon. I'm a huge Transformers fan, and they're just nailing it, man. They're hitting it out of the park with this 86 Studio series and everything that Hasbro is putting out in the main line, the Legacy United stuff. Really cool. And this guy, Frenzy, was one of my favorites as a kid. Let's see if I can get. Of course, I'm not going to be able to get any focus on that. I'll definitely be posting pictures of this guy with the exclusive post on Patreon. But this guy is awesome. This is the 86 Studio series, Frenzy, and he comes with he's fully articulated except for his elbows. His wrists are articulated, shoulders, head is on a ball joint, hips and knees ball joint. He's even got like his feet can, like bend in, whatever. He's awesome, and the sculpt is amazing, and he's got his little guns that can come off, but he's also got his pile driver accessories, right? There's two of them, which I know you guys have seen this figure before, and he's not a new release by any means, but he's new to me. You just fold in these hands and pop the pile driver on, and you get that like from the show when he did his thing. And these guys retail for like $12, $11 or something. You can still get them on Entertainment Earth for about that. Look at that. Hey! He had kind of like a high, like kid voice almost. It's like, we're gonna rumble you to Doodly Town. Look at that, it's awesome. So I picked that up. It's great. I don't know if I'm gonna do a full review, but I'll definitely put some photos up, like I said, with this post. Something else I picked up for a custom for myself. So I created this new character called Pooh Bear. If you follow my illustration, AC Draw Stuff. That's my illustration Instagram account and YouTube account. And I created this character called Pooh Bear, one word, who looks kind of like a Care Bear, but he's got a pile of poo on his chest. So I bought this beater Care Bear from the 83 Kenner Care Bear line. This is like Tenderheart. And I'm going to customize him for myself and turn him into Pooh Bear. So that's going to be a project that I'm going to really enjoy, because I have a rule that every customizer or artist should follow. Doesn't matter if you do toys or watercolor or what. Make something for yourself every once in a while. We're always doing these commissions, trying to get noticed with our work and stuff like that. It should all be for yourself, but make a gift for yourself, whether it's a custom toy, a painting, whatever. It's just when you have the ability to kind of make anything you want, sometimes it's hard to remember that you can make those things for yourself, instead of always doing a job, working on a job or whatever. So I can't wait to start in on that. Speaking of commissions and customizing, I've almost done with this guy. Where's his other head? Adam X. This is a commission from a while ago. And his build is done. I think I finished his build. I've got to do some sculpting to his belt and a little bit on his body, and then his hair. I need to sculpt his hair and get that going. But he's a gnarly dude. He's an X-Man character. He's got a lot of blades on him. I had never seen him before until the client brought him to me, and he's going to have a alternate non-yelling face. So hopefully you guys can see that. I know the light is washing him out. I'll post pictures of these with the post also. absolutely. So I'm excited about that, wrapping that up. I always get really excited when I finish commissions and when I'm getting close to wrapping them up. And I've got a few. I've got in front of me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, something like that. 9 that my hands are on pretty regularly. This was another one I just posted about on the Patreon. Just a sneak peek of Clint Barton as Goliath. I still have to sculpt his face mask, and I think that's it. Face mask and a little bit on the boots. So that's going to be a fun one to finish up. So yeah, so that's kind of what's going on in my creative world. Oh, and then something else that I'm not going to share with the video, but I'll definitely have it in the exclusive post for this, is if you guys, maybe you follow Dano Banano on Instagram. He's an artist, customizer, very popular guy. He does this once a year, this McDonald's Chicken McNugget art installation here in Chicago, and I am always inspired by stuff like that. When there's like I'm not going to be part of it, but when there's stuff like that goes on, I always like to test myself and see what if I was, and what could I come up with. So I drew a picture here, which I'm not going to show you. You have to go look at patrons will be able to see it, because it's not ready to share publicly, but it's pretty much done. It's mostly done. Anyway, it's a picture of 6 nuggets in the container. They're all dressed as Ronald McDonald, and they're all wearing my trademark 3D glasses. And the best part of it is that there's a couple of sauce containers in the picture, and I used actual real McDonald's barbecue sauce to paint this. I dipped a paintbrush in it and painted it onto the picture. And I was really surprised. The heat in here is messing with it a little, like making it sticky a little bit. But when it cools off and it dries up, it's not very tacky, and it stays. It's there forever. And I'm gonna seal it with something so that you can actually touch it and whatever. But I really like how it turned out, and I wanted to add that sort of like uniqueness to it. Real barbecue sauce. So I can't wait for you guys to see it. That'll be on the Patreon. I need a sip of water. Excuse me. And that'll eventually be on my AC Draw Stuff account, both Instagram and YouTube. The other thing I'm working on, I can show you really briefly, is for my gym that I go to, that I've been going to for like 17 years. They asked me to design a t-shirt, and I've just worked out some quick sketches of the gym and possible like angles to show it in. I'm really excited about that, and flattered that they would ask. It's probably gonna be watercolored, I'm guessing, and it'll be on a shirt at some point. That'd be awesome. Can't wait. So anyway, that's what's going on. You guys can always commission me for stuff, whether it's figures or art commissions, illustration, watercolor, painting, stuff like that. And with that, I think we're gonna get to it. Where are we at? 13 minutes. It's quicker than last time. I'm trying not to go over an hour with these guys, but I've gone over an hour so far on both of the videos. So thank you to everybody that put questions in on the Patreon. I'm going to get to all of them. Some of them are just comments, and I posted a question to the questioners on Patreon that when you post your questions, I had a prompt in there that was like, also when you post your questions, tell me what your favorite 80s teen 80s movie was. Breakfast Club, stuff like that. So most of the people who put questions in answered that question. So I'm always curious. Those are my favorite movies of all time: Breakfast Club, Weird Science, 16 Candles, Pretty in Pink, John Hughes, all that stuff, The Brat Pack. I just recently rewatched St. Elmo's Fire. Also, this is a new stand that's very, very jiggly. Sorry about that. St. Elmo's Fire, I hadn't seen that in a long time, so that was a good rewatch. So that was the prompt. Here are the questions from the patrons. First up is Brett Barnacle. Brett is awesome. He's a very interactive patron on the Patreon, and I really appreciate his questions, and one of them I'm looking at. One of them is pretty going to be controversial. So he has 3 questions. I'm going to save. It says I've got to know. He knows I'm a big Star Wars fan, which I absolutely am. But also, I'm a frustrated Star Wars fan. So anyway, he says, I've got to know what's your take on Acolyte, which is the new Disney Plus series. It takes place in the end of the High Republic era. He also says, what is your go... So I'm going to save that one for last of his questions because it's going to be a longer explanation. So his second question is, what is your go-to medieval weapon? Which Brett asked this question before last night. So he asked it last week when I posted this. And last night we got the premiere of season 2 of House of the Dragon, the Game of Thrones prequel series. The first episode of season 2 aired last night, and it was great. And so anyway, talk about medieval. There is a plethora of medieval weapons. It's a tough question because I've always been a simple person when it comes to accessories, I guess, for myself and in my life. And I've thought about this question before, and I can also apply it to, like, hey, what if I lived in a Star Wars universe, or what if I lived in some other, fictional universe? What would be your weapon? I play in a D&D. I play a D&D game with some friends, and I like the simplicity. My character's main weapon is a shield, like Captain America. I love Captain America; it's my favorite. So that's kind of my go-to weapon, is a shield, because you really can't define its use better than how Captain America uses it. Yeah, he's never really cut anybody's head off with it, even though plenty of the people who took the shield from him throwing it in the movies should have been, like, cut right in half, because that dude has super strength. But I feel like if you're good with a shield, and if it's medieval, there were ways back then I could make, like, a wooden shield and line it with, like, metal or something. It'd be a little heavier, but maybe make it a little smaller. And I'd use it in the way that he uses it, as a defensive weapon, number 1, and then as maybe it's got blades on it, or I can, like, pop blades out the side, like Hondo McLean's firecracker tire that pops out of the back of his truck. So stuff like that. So my go-to is that, because I'm very, very much into defense. I think when you're under attack, whether you're in a medieval setting, a Star Wars setting, or walking down the street, the very first thing that you should be thinking is, how do I protect myself? Not, if you see a punch coming at you, how can I immediately return that punch? It should be, all right, a punch is coming, what do I do to not get hurt by it? And so I feel like a shield is, like, it's just the way to go. It would definitely be my very first go-to medieval weapon. 2 and 3 would be a sword, but not a giant sword, not anything like Long Claw or something like that. It would be more along the lines of something like, I feel like, sticking with Game of Thrones, I feel like Jaime Lannister, didn't he have 2 of those cool swords that were made out of, like, special metal? One of them was shorter, so I feel like, I'd want something that's shorter than, like, a katana. So you've got, like, as far as I could be totally wrong, you got, like, a samurai sword, it's pretty long. You got a katana, it's a little shorter, and then something that's, like, I could still swing it, bigger than a dagger, but also, like I could, manipulate it and use it in a tight situation. That'd be number 2. Number 3 would be some kind of bow, and I don't know if it'd be a crossbow or a regular bow and arrow. I guess a crossbow would be a little bit more compact. So that's what I'm thinking. But shield is number 1. And then Brett's third question, underrated summer recipes. Underrated summer recipes. Okay, I made this the other night. I was over at some friend's house. I used to have a neighbor live down on the first floor. I'm on the third. And then on the second floor was another friend. We all used to cook, and whenever we cooked, we'd bring the other to a sample of what we made. Be like, you gotta try this. one day he knocks on the first floor, he knocks on my door and he's like, you gotta try this. And it was just a real simple like chicken taco, right? But it had very complex flavors, and I love that. And so what it was just, you know, you can use corn or flour tortilla, small. So like, not like, you don't want like a burrito thing. You want like a smaller corn or flour tortilla. I prefer corn's healthier, but they flake and break easier. Flour holds up better, and I like to load my tacos up. So, you know. But here's the recipe. So you got your tortilla. I use rotisserie chicken that you buy at the grocery store, and I pull it apart. I usually only use the white meat for the tacos, so I dice that up. I put it in the pan. I season it with whatever you want. It can be lemon pepper, it can be taco seasoning. Season the chicken, set that aside. You're done with it. And then toppings. The complex flavors of this simple taco, which is just this really easy salsa. It's tomato, onion, jalapeno, all diced up, and then take a lime, squeeze the juice over it. Done. It's the best salsa. You could maybe a little salt and pepper, but you don't even need that. It's the best salsa. It's so fresh. It's great. And then I also make a homemade guacamole, which is just, all I use is avocados and lime juice and a little bit of very small amount of salt. I don't like to cook with a lot of salt. That's it for the guacamole. And then instead of sour cream, I use Greek yogurt, which I highly recommend y'all trying that. If you're a big sour cream person, go with Greek yogurt. There's so many nutritional benefits to that. And so, yeah, taco, you got tortilla, chicken, 4-part salsa, and then whatever, guacamole, Greek yogurt. So easy. And it took like, I don't know, 20 minutes to prepare and cook and get it and assemble done. On these hot days, summer, sitting outside, you got your LaCroix is my drink of choice, or just some ice water. I prefer like some LaCroix, bubbly something. That's Good Eats. Speaking of, I've been watching some Good Eats on HBO. Alton Brown, that is one of my favorite shows of all time, and it's all on there. So, all right, Brett. So, oh wait, let me think real quick if there's another recipe. The tacos. I need a drink. Oh, well, I'm a huge fruit guy, and in the summertime when it's hot, there's nothing better. Just fresh fruit. I could eat that all day, all night. One other recipe that I did recently that was excellent. I was really surprised. It's really simple. Noodles, a thick noodle, like an egg noodle that's long. Not the short egg noodles, those are great, but a little salt and pepper, butter, done. But a longer egg noodle or a fettuccine. And prosciutto, crisp it up in the pan, throw it on top of the pasta, grated Parmesan, squeeze of a lemon, salt and pepper, done. It's amazing. Real light as far as pasta goes. And then, yeah, that's it. So good. All right, so that's 2. I got more, and I will absolutely share those with you on the Patreon, Brett, when as I think of them. I'll tag them, or I'll tag you, or make sure that you see them when I post them. So that's an awesome question. Thank you, man. So, Brett, your first one, thoughts on the Acolyte. I'm not enjoying it, and I wanted to enjoy it so bad. It looked good. It's got, I don't know his name, but the guy from Squid Game is like the main character. Matrix lady, what was it? It's not Carrie Fisher. Is it Carrie something? I don't know. Anyway, the Matrix lady. Why would you kill her off in the first 5 minutes? But that's not the problem I have with it. I'm fine with killing off characters, especially compelling ones in a short period of time. My problem with it is that Disney plus both Marvel and Star Wars shows lack out of the box thinking. They're so formulaic and they're so predictable, like unbelievably predictable. They're not fresh, they're not inspiring. I don't feel like they come from an inspired point of view. I don't think there's a lot of thought process that goes in it. And the shame of it is that they've got good creators working on these shows. but I feel like they must be hamstrung or ham-tied or whatever it's called to meet the mold, you know, especially Marvel. I haven't enjoyed a Marvel show. I don't know. It's weird. Kamala Khan was fine, but it wasn't like, you know, what as good as these shows should be. None of it meets the expectations of a film, a feature production, and they just feel cheap, you know, and they don't look good. They look too tight. They don't look like the worlds that they're in can breathe. Just everything. It's most of the problems that I have with it is writing, number one, and production value, number two. And I feel like we're getting to a point, if we haven't gotten there already, where all this stuff that they're putting out, because we're so eager to get it, that content, and we love the great stuff that's come before it in the Star Wars world, we love. Like, that is amazing. The original trilogy, untouchable. Because we love all that stuff so much, we want to love this stuff just as much. And I think we stay in that headspace through the duration, especially with stuff like Mandalorian, you know, the early stuff, which I thought that I loved, but as I go back and rewatch it, I've got a lot of problems with a lot of that stuff. You know, I'll always enjoy watching Baby Yoda walk around, shuffling around. Like, it's one of the greatest things that's ever been done on film, is that character literally walking around. But that show should have been, it doesn't make sense why they, and I know this is an old gripe, but it doesn't make sense why that show wasn't just Boba Fett and the 6 bounty hunters, right? Boba Fett, Dengar, Bossk, IG-88, Forlom, Zuckuss, 6. Those 6 on a mission, period. That's what everybody wanted, but for some reason, they didn't do that. So they created derivative. It wasn't fresh, it wasn't new. Even Baby Yoda, it's not. It's just not. And within that show that I just talked about, they could have introduced a character like Valance, an amazing character from the comics that would have been a fresh. You've got the staple 6 that we want to see. You want a fresh aspect to it. You bring a character like that in, changes the whole dynamic from what we know of them in live action, which is basically nothing. Which also is like, begs the question, why didn't you just do that? These guys have never been together on screen except for that 30 seconds, and not even, in Empire Strikes Back. So, derivative, a lot of derivative Mandalorian. So Acolyte, again, it's just nothing new, and the things that you can tell when they put something on the screen and they go, oh, they're really gonna like this, right? You like this? Because I love fan service. I'm a fan, service me. But don't take me for granted. And don't just give me something that looks familiar and expect me for my jaw to drop, you know? The Wookiee Jedi, for some reason, sticks out in my head. No pun intended, because his head sticks out. And I just look at him and I laugh. Because the design on him is just, it's laughable. And that's one of those things that they think we'll think is cool, and I'm sure a lot of people do, and it's fine if you do. And it's fine if you like the series, but obviously, like what you like, and I don't want to take away from that at all. You know, but when they're putting out, like Andor, Rogue One is a great movie. That's this kind of stuff they should be putting out. I think Solo is a really good movie. I've come around to that. I highly suggest people rewatching that, because I didn't like it when it first came out, because I was expecting a Harrison Ford derivative actor, and that's not what it is. Alden Ehrenreich is the same thing as Jim Lee drawing the X-Men, or John Byrne drawing the X-Men, and then Jim Lee coming in and drawing the X-Men. It's the same character with a different artist's take. Okay? It's not the same actor's take on the character. It's the same character, different artist take. So go into Solo and stuff like that with that perspective, and I think you'll enjoy it more. Because the aesthetic of Solo is great. The aesthetic of Rogue One is great. I believe those are as close as we'll get to the original trilogy as far as aesthetic, vibe, feel, nostalgia. I don't know why they don't do that. Instead, they're pumping out these series, the most infuriating of which was Ahsoka, because she's one of my top 5 favorite characters in Star Wars of all time, and I absolutely despise that show. It was so poorly done and poorly cast, and no story, and rushed, and too much crammed into it because they didn't have a story. So they thought, we'll cram all this stuff in and that'll be what people get excited about instead of a good story. I'm watching this one episode of season 2 Game of Thrones last night, and nothing like tremendous kapow happened, you know, or action or anything, but the story is great. It's captivating. I'm looking at the screen and it's like barely lit, 2 people just talking in a dark room for like 5 minutes, and I'm like, oh, what are they going to say next? What information are they going to give us now? It's amazing. Star Wars needs a lot of help, and as long as we, as a fan base, swallow it, we're going to keep getting, as much as you may enjoy it, it is not the caliber that it should be, could be, and has been when you look at the movies. And so as long as we keep swallowing it, they're going to keep giving us that, and forever. That's how it's going to be. So I want to say I have hope for Acolyte, but what, 6 episodes or 8 even? Let's say it's 8. We're already 3 in, and it's like, I don't know. I read somewhere that episode 3 was going to like crack the space-time continuum as far as Star Wars fans go. It barely registered on my Richter scale of like interesting, you know? I don't know what's happening there. So anyway, that's my answer. I appreciate the question, Brett, and I love Star Wars. It's my favorite world. Absolutely, like outside of reality. It's my favorite fictional world. But I don't trust the hands that it's in. And I made a lot of excuses. You guys know I used to do the Star Wars podcast, I've Spoken. And one of my patrons made a comment that I'm going to read here in a little bit about how my negativity influenced, or my opinion. That podcast was designed, and the point of that podcast was, amidst all this Star Wars negativity, I wanted to find positivity in the things that I may not enjoy fully, or that people weren't enjoying. And now that I go back and listen to those and think about what I said, I was trying too hard to enjoy that stuff. So it's a shame for me personally as a fan. Maybe you feel the same way, maybe you don't. But Brett, thank you so much for 3 questions, man. And I always tell my patrons, ask as many as you want. If I don't get to them, I'll do it in the next episode. And that's the only way you can ask questions, is to be a part of the Patreon. So I really appreciate it. And he also tags on to my prompt. And to answer your question posted above, I'd have to go ahead and say Ferris Bueller's Day Off is Brett's favorite 80s teen movie. And a phenomenal one it is. Takes place in Chicago. It's a classic, so many great lines, and I always forget, I like that movie. I'm absolutely conscious of it, and it has a massive place in my childhood and my life, but I always forget to like lump it in there with the John Hughes school, like high school centric movies, because that one, they kind of like leave high school in the beginning and they go around Chicago, so it doesn't really take place, you know, in and around high school, which only Breakfast Club does, but at least they're at high school parties and this and that. Anyway, so I'm glad when people bring it up, I'm like, yeah, dude. And I've seen that movie dozens of times. It's great. So Charlie Sheen, you know, getting his first popular role. So anyway, thank you, Brett. I appreciate it, and thank you for being a member of the Patreon community. You are awesome. All of you are awesome. Next up is Charlie Wrighton. He says, AC Toy Hacks does some cool labels for Transformers. I just got some from them and plan to get more. How do you feel about the aftermarket upgrades for toys? Great question, Charlie. Charlie Wrighton is a old patron for years, but also a friend that I've hung out in real life, and just a great friend. And I texted with Charlie tonight, so thank you, Charlie, for again for those positive laser beams. I won't get into it now. I'm going to save it for later, but for a different time. But I've got a personal situation going on right now that I was talking with Charlie about and trying to figure out. So anyway, I'll be talking about that with Patreon very soon. So as far as third-party aftermarket upgrades, I think they're great. Do it. The thing I don't, I love like add-ons. There's a lot of companies doing like, for stuff like these transformers, for instance, like the back of his legs, right, are completely hollowed, just empty spaces. They haven't released anything to my knowledge to fix that, but companies will do that, where it's like they'll release a package that has like space, what do you call them, space fillers or something for transformers like that. A different head sculpt maybe, or different weapons that might have been left out. That stuff is awesome when it's add-ons like that. When you're talking about stickers for like vintage toys that the stickers have worn away or something, and you want to upgrade or fix them or whatever, I'm fine with that, as long as like if I buy it, if I'm looking for one on eBay for my collection, I really hope that they'll say these are repro stickers. And if they are, most of the time I won't buy that toy, because I'd rather have the garbage, worn off stickers, my original stickers, and decide to replace them myself if I decide to do that. Because I'm a completist, and with that I like things how they originally were, especially my vintage toys. So, but there's a lot of different stuff that can fall into the category of what Toy Hacks is doing, aftermarket upgrades and stuff like that. And I say go for it. It's your toy, and if it doesn't meet your expectations, or you think it could just be a little bit better with something like a new sticker or whatever, do it. I think that's awesome, especially if ultimately it's going to be in your collection for your life. It should be the way that you want it to be, so go for it. I think I just recently sold my vintage Snake Mountain playset from He-Man Motu from like 1983 or 84. I picked it up at one of my comic book stores like 3 or 4 years ago for like $30 with the intent of rehabbing it, cleaning it up, and it was mostly complete. It was just missing some of the bridge and maybe the battery cover, which doesn't really even matter. I think that was it. But the stickers were trashed. I mean, they were like shredded and faded and torn and worn off. And I always wanted to fix it up and get new repro stickers and keep it in my collection, but I never had the time to fix it up and clean it up. So I put it on eBay and I sold it as is, and I didn't replace the stickers. Yeah, I mean, if I had put them on it and done that project, I never would have sold it. I would have kept it. And I regret that I had to sell it, but hard times, So I say go for it, like it doesn't matter if it's something in your collection. It doesn't matter what anybody else's opinions are. If it makes you happy, like you just said, some cool labels for your Transformers, and you want to get more, do it, man. I think that's awesome. Especially those Transformers, those vintage ones, Optimus Prime stickers, like those things peeled off so easy. They were almost like a metallic. A lot of those Transformers had like a metallic sticker, like sheen to it, and they peel real easy over time because they're so thick and sturdy. As the glue deteriorates and they start to lift, eventually they'll just roll and roll and roll. And so my Optimus Prime has its vintage stickers, and every corner of the stickers is like rolled up. So I've thought about getting new stickers for him, but also maybe I'd rather just get some new glue and glue those down or something. I don't know. Anyway, Charlie, thank you. I know you come back later for another one. I feel like there's a moth flying around here or something. There's a bug right there. Anyway, Charlie Gushy, good friend, another outside of the Patreon friend. He says, I recently found out about a third-party supplement that is being developed for 5th edition D&D that's 80s pop culture themed, and that makes me wish there were more urban fantasy media out there to enjoy, besides Onward and Bright. So, my question is, what are some urban fantasy stories that you have enjoyed, and what are some things you'd like to see created? For example, I'd love to see something like Mallrats with a cast of teens ranging in a variety of D&D type fantasy races set in an 80s super mall, or a funny buddy cop film like Beverly Hills Cop meets D&D. Awesome question, Charlie. So, Onward, I think I might have seen something for that, or a poster or something. I haven't seen the movie. Bright is the Will Smith, right? Is it Will Smith? Yeah, right? It's Will Smith and Uncle Owen, I think, in Bright, which I didn't really enjoy that much. For me, if that's an urban fantasy is a term I'm hearing for the first time from you, I think it's tricky because those are two, like for me, Bright, using that as the example, a world where it's our world and we're sharing it with D&D fantasy characters that came, I think they like popped up one day or came through some portal or something. It's just, I'm all for like suspension of disbelief and imagination and all that. But to me that seems like a bit too far as like probability. To me it feels like it's more probable that there's a Star Wars galaxy out there, you know? Or that Eternia actually exists way out there in a different universe. So, and that, you know, that's where I'm going, is that the thing I dislike the most about the Masters of the Universe movie from 1987 is that it left Eternia and it came here. It's like, what? But that's a budget thing, you know, like creating a whole universe for them to play around in costs money. So they set it here and instead just put the budget into a handful of characters. I love that movie. It's great. It's fun. It's an 80s movie that I, loved as a kid. But having said that, that is where I would go, is do that, but do it better. And I guess that qualifies as sort of D&D flavored characters, Beastman, and, a giant dude with a sword, and stuff like that. So to answer part of your question, what are some urban fantasy stories that you've enjoyed? Definitely He-Man. That aspect of it was what turned me off early, but now I enjoy that movie so much more. And actually, if you want to hear way more thoughts on that, my buddy Josh Blum, who's a member of the Patreon, and I'm going to have some of his questions here in a minute, check out his podcast, The 13th Hour. I was on there last year for his Masters of the Universe. We watched it and talked about it, and we talked about all that. It's his podcast is amazing, 13th Hour. So check that out if you want more. But that would be my answer to that part of your question. And then what are some things you'd like to see created? So, like I said, doing that, as much as I like it, do it, but do it better. And don't use He-Man characters, because Masters of the Universe doesn't need to leave Eternia or Etheria or any of those places, because they're amazing. And just like put the budget in and do those movies right. But I think that there is, comic books does it great. Even if it's something as simple as the Savage Land in Marvel Comics that the X-Men travel to a lot. That's kind of like an aspect or a corner of that universe, Marvel universe, that sometimes invades the main universe. And anytime you get that in comics, there's always a portal opening and weird stuff coming out from a different time or a different universe or whatever. And they always do it better than the movies do. That said, I think that there's a lot to explore with the idea where it's like our world and when you said buddy cop movie like Beverly Hills Cop meets D&D, first thing I thought of was, what's the name of the movie? Dead Heat, with Treat Williams and Joe Piscopo. It's kind of like that, where like this world, it's like our world, but there's like zombie, like sentient, coherent zombie people that like are running around as well. It's weird. It's a fun 80s movie that I grew up with. So that kind of like pops into my brain. Yeah, so it's a tricky thing to do, you know, a tricky thing to like maneuver, but I think the key to it is, like with Bright, the thing I didn't enjoy was that the aspects of the D&D like world and the characters, they were already too established by the time we come into the movie. So if you're gonna do that, I know everybody is like, oh, another origin story. I love origin stories, just do them right. I'll take another Batman origin or Spider-Man origin movie, just do it right, do it well. I think that with Bright, absolutely it would have been awesome to see day one of that occurrence or whatever. I think that's where they messed up, was like you came into it and you're just supposed to swallow it. And no, I don't know, that didn't work for me. So Charlie, thank you so much for the question. That's awesome. Charlie is a big D&D guy, and he knows that I am as well, obviously. So I love his question as far as that goes. And I wish I had some LaCroix right now. Charlie Wrighton is back. Now, Charlie Wrighton just had a question, but what he's known for on the Patreon is his apocalypse questions. So here is his apocalypse question. In the inevitable Muppet apocalypse, what movie is that? They say a kid says apocalypse. Apocalypse. 90% of humanity is infected with the Muppet virus and turned into small, felt people with big eyes and big mouths. You are tasked with finding a cure. Just kidding, there is no cure. What movies would you like redone with one human character and the rest of the cast is Muppets? I'll go first. His trademark. His trademark within his trademark. Sling Blade with only the kid as the human. Some biscuits and mustard. Charlie loves Sling Blade. I used to love that movie. I haven't seen it since it came out. So, what movie would I like to see get the Muppet treatment? Let's see, one human character and the rest are Muppets. So, man, can you imagine? I know Charlie Gushy already said this, but can you imagine Beverly Hills Cop, where Axel Foley is the only human and the rest are Muppets, and he's got to deal with that? That would be hilarious. I think that would be awesome. I mean, I gotta go like, there's so many 80s movies that would be amazing that way. I think Weird Science, where Anthony Michael Hall, Kelly LeBrock? I don't know. That's a tough one. Anthony Michael Hall is the only human, or Kelly LeBrock's the only human? Maybe Kelly LeBrock. That might actually turn it into a really endearing movie instead of I love that movie. It's one of my favorites. But instead of it being so sexified and focused on sex, if she's the only human and everybody else is Muppets, it might make it a little more cute and endearing. It could still be perverted, I guess. But then again, like, the dynamic between the two guys is so hilarious, especially Anthony Michael Hall. I love it. Yeah, man, Beverly Hills Cop. I'm looking at my posters and movies. Let me look over here. Oh, you know what would be awesome? Dude, absolutely. So Reese, my friend and patron, Reese Porter, he just came over and hung out. I mentioned that. He also dropped off a copy of Maniac of New York with the Dawn of the Dead homage cover. Give me a zombie movie where you got one human survivor and the rest of all the zombies are Muppets, and they're like trying to, like, you know, chew on this person. And you could go either way with this, because maybe the fact that they're Muppets, you're safe. They can't break skin. And so, and the human knows this, like it's something that is understood. Or you could go the other, and they kind of like just walk through crowds of zombies as they go, and they're just kind of like gumming on them. Or you go the other way where same situation, but if they do get bit, just like a zombie, it affects you. So you're like kicking. I could see, like, I love when a Muppet gets kicked by a human and they just go flying across the screen. So you could do a lot of that stuff. I think that's the way to go, man. And which zombie movie would it be? Gotta go Dawn of the Dead in the mall. I think that would work really well. Yeah, Dawn of the Dead. And the one human is, let's see, in the mall. Who was the hero of that movie? I feel like everybody died. I don't know. The black dude who's like later on in one of the other movies, like when there's no more, he says, when there's no room in hell, the dead will walk the earth. He's in that movie and he's like one of the like badasses. So maybe him. Whoever's the lead, just make them the human, but make all the zombies Muppets. That's amazing. Have we ever seen a zombie Muppet? That's crazy. Or a Muppet zombie. Charlie, you keep raising the bar, man. One of these days you're gonna be empty. Thank you so much, buddy. The rest of the questions, let's see. Oh, okay, there's a comment later, but the rest of the questions are from Josh Blum. Now, Josh, I mentioned him earlier. Check out his podcast, 13th Hour. He's got some questions here, but he also has some comments, and they're kind of really long comments. So I'm going to try to like paraphrase a couple of them. But, all right, so Josh Blum, here we go. Favorite 80s high school movie is Some Kind of Wonderful. I knew that because we also did a podcast for that. I was on there, and Josh actually introduced me to that movie. Great movie. Some Kind of Wonderful, written by John Hughes, directed by Howard Deutsch, I think. I could be wrong. Eric Stoltz and man, what's her name? Back to the Future girl and the other girl with the short hair and some other cool people. Great movie. 87, I believe. He says, Some Kind of Wonderful, though I must say I think of it a bit differently as an adult than as a teenager. The idea of blowing your income on a pair of earrings to make some kind of grand gesture to prove your worth to a bunch of people who could care less and are shitbags seems, well, worthless as an adult. But I get where the main character was coming from as a teenager. Also, it was the 80s, and that was an 80s problem, you know? I think nowadays things are so complicated and extra and overdone, and everybody's upset about something and triggered by something, and who cares? I like that as a problem in the 80s, or as a thing where it's like I'm buying spending all my money on a pair of earrings. I did that. I don't know who it was for. It wasn't earrings, it was a necklace, but I didn't have money as a kid. I had an allowance, saved it up, wanted to impress a girl. We weren't even dating, and I was really young. I bought a necklace, gave it to her, and it was like, oh, thanks. So that was it. End of story. But I get it. It's a very 80s trope in a way. Almost more in real life than it was in movies. So, Some Kind of Wonderful. Check it out. It's a great movie. I love the end scene. Oh, Elias Koteas from, Casey Jones from TMNT. He's in it, and he's great, and he's a tough guy. And the ending is a great scene with him, Stoltz, and the villain, the bully guy. Excellent stuff. Excellent. Josh Blum, favorite way of dealing with a paint encrusted brush. Do you ever say it's not worth it and just chuck it in the bin? No. I have a real problem with, let me see if I can get him out of here. Gotta scoot this light. So this is my paintbrush cup. Okay. It's not a ton of paintbrushes, but it's a lot. And I would say at least half of them are old, you know, like super frayed. Like, look at this guy. Look at that. But he's still good for covering like large areas. Like, I can't do a lot of detailing with that fray and stuff. And it seems like, you know, like you can shave it down and like give it a haircut, so to speak, on the sides. But the more you do that, then you end up with, you know, weird, and I've done that with this one. You know, a paintbrush is designed specifically to, you know, so that all the bristles are the same length, or not, in the case of something like this. You know, they're a bunch of different lengths. And I should have showed this at the beginning. I'm really excited to use this. I just got this for watercolor. It's a specific watercolor paintbrush. I'm really excited to use that. I've never used one. But the problem that I see more is paint encrusted is solvable. All you got to do is, I usually soap and water and give it a good, like, you know, scrubbing there. And then get some acetone. Be very careful. It's toxic. It melts plastic. But get some acetone and like get the brush in there. Let it soak. Or the problem is that a lot of the paint with a paintbrush, the paint goes into the bristles all the way to the top, closest to the metal pinch. And that's where it starts. Like I can't even push it over because there's paint in there at that point instead of up here at the tip. So to get that stuff cleared and dissolved, you know, soap and water, and then put it in some acetone, you know, and start squishing it down, pushing it down until it finally dissolves and gives way. And you'll feel it almost like crack in half where it gets the paint, where it meets the metal. And then you can start to, like, you'll see the paint come out and rework it. You can work it and stuff. And that'll give your paintbrush a lot more life. So I do that. I've also got like smaller ones that are just like, you know. Hi, babe. Oh, Mother Fluffer just came up and said hi. Hi. You want to come sit with me? So same situation, but when it's smaller, it ruins the brush, or it's harder to keep the brush's shape when you do what I just said with the big one. But you can still do it. When I really draw, like finally give up on a brush, it's either got to be let's see if I can find one here. Something that's a fine tip. Let's see. Here you go. So here's a detail fine tip brush that over time, you know, frayed, and I take a X-Acto knife and cut off the extra stuff, and then cut more, and now it's like this weird flat Frankenstein top. That needs to go because it doesn't really have a use. And then the other time is sometimes I will get super glue on my brushes, and even though you could use acetone also to kind of get that out, most of the times you gotta just chuck it. So, but the other side of that is you can always use the wooden part, you know, of the brush handle, whatever, for something, for a bow stick weapon, for dowel rods that you need for a project. Especially you, Josh. I'm sure you could figure out something to do with, you know, a tubular piece of wood. Tubular. Thank you, Josh. Josh Plummy says, candy flavors that transport you back in time. Man. For example, Jolly Ranchers always transported me back to the 4th grade, since my teacher used to award hard candy prizes as if you got a perfect score on your math quizzes. And there were, among the generic butterscotch and peppermint flavored ones, only a few Jolly Ranchers each time. So competition was fierce. The generic butterscotch and peppermint flavored ones, who wants those? And there's Jolly Ranchers. Dude, there are so many candies. There are so many. So I think I've talked about this before, maybe, but I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and in Wheaton, Illinois, right downtown Wheaton on let's see, it's either Front Street or 3rd Street or something, on the north side of the tracks. There's a red door on the strip. It's just a red door, and it's a candy shop, and it's an alley. It was there since I was a kid, and I hope that it's still there because it's so unique. And so it's just an alley, you know, like not much bigger, not much wider than me, and probably about 50 feet back, maybe 30 feet back. And on one side of it, it's all little 3-cent, or it used to be, it's more now, I'm sure, but it used to be like 3-cent and 5-cent and 10-cent candies. 10 cents was insane. Most of it was like 3 and 5. So everything from like Jolly Ranchers to gummies to whatever, all that stuff. And then at the very end was the guy sitting in a chair. He's making popcorn, best popcorn ever. And so you walk in, grab a bag off the wall, a little brown bag, walk down, fill it with all your candies, get to him, get some popcorn, pay the man, get out. You get a whole bag of candy, you know, like this kind of bag, and popcorn, similar size for like $3 maybe. I don't know. And I remember at the time, I'd had $3, my brother, my sister. So my dad would be dropping like $10, whoop-de-doo. But we all thought like, holy crap, it's a lot of money to spend on candy. Especially when it's all like nickel a piece. So all of that stuff, every piece of candy in that store, still today brings me back, whether it's Jolly Ranchers. I wasn't really a huge Jolly Rancher guy, but I had one recently for the first time in decades, and it was good. I enjoyed it. I just had like 2 of them. But my stuff is the gummies and Coke bottles, gummy Coke bottles, like the good ones, Haribo. Man, those are amazing. I used to really think that if I bit off the tip of it and turned it upside down and sucked on it, that the Coke would come out of it. I convinced myself, like, yeah, I can see it moving. Not true, I don't think, but those are still my favorites. Maybe tied with Gummy Frogs, green on top, white on the bottom. Man, excellent. So those guys, and then there's all kinds of like, even, you know, like Bonkers, all the big Hubba Bubba and Big League Chew gum, stuff like that. Even like the wax bottles that had some kind of weird food coloring juice inside that you bite the tip off and then drink them out, and, you know, drink out of it. It was like literally a second and a half of flavor, and then it was gone. So many, dude. And it's really cool that there's a place downtown St. Charles. So there's the Red Door. There's a place downtown St. Charles called Fuzzy Wigs, I think. And then there's also another one here in Chicago on Michigan Avenue. It's like a 3-story candy shop, and they've got all that stuff. And I go to those places maybe once a year, but every once in a while when I'm at CVS or something, I'll grab some gummy Coke bottles or frogs. They're great. My mom always sends me that stuff anyway too. It's getting warm in here, man. 81 is the register. So anyway, yeah, those are timeless, and I love them, and they definitely take me back, that nostalgia. Let's see, Josh Blum's got a couple more. Let's see where we're at. Candy flavors. Songs you liked as a kid, but now as an adult, when you read the lyrics, they take on a different meaning. For example, I always liked the song Your Love by The Outfield, but when you read the lyrics, it's kind of skeezy, dude cheating on his girl. So you sent me the link, I clicked on it, because I didn't know the title, but I know that song, and it's an amazing song, and I listened to it today. I don't, even though I'm a songwriter and a musician, I was never good with writing lyrics, and always, the 2 guys that I enjoyed their songs most was Eddie Vedder, Pearl Jam, where most of the time you couldn't understand what he was saying, and he didn't want people to necessarily understand. He never included the lyrics in the liner notes because he wanted people to have their own interpretations of the music. For me, it just meant that I could enjoy the music, which I was always resonated. I was driven or drawn to more was the music. A fat beat, a great riff, 2 riffs, dueling riffs. So I was always drawn to music from that point of view. Also Tom York, who sometimes you can understand him, sometimes not, from Radiohead. But when you could understand what he was saying, a lot of times he would just repeat one word or a phrase over and over, just moaning it out, and it was more about his melody, So with Pearl Jam, it's more about the energy in the music. With a band like Radiohead, it would be like the melody and the music. But I was never really drawn to a song like, damn, those lyrics really hit me. And I'm still not today. In fact, I love Hall & Oates. They're tied for first as my favorite band of all time with Pearl Jam. And I don't know a lot of their lyrics. It's more the feeling I get when I hear the song. That's how I've always been when I was a kid and how I am today. It's the nostalgic feel, and I think sound is number 2 behind smell as far as nostalgia goes, like bringing that back in our brain. So, but when I saw your question, to answer it right out, like more specifically, Pete Holmes is a comic, a funny man, stand-up, and amongst other things, who you should check out. The guy is hilarious, and I'll actually post a link maybe to a couple of his clips that I really enjoy. He just came out with a new special on Netflix, and he also, so with that, he's posting a lot of stuff on Instagram, and I just saw him post something, I don't know how old it was, but it's a clip of him talking about the Bruce Springsteen song. Hey little girl, is your daddy home? Does he know leave you all alone? And Pete Holmes is talking about, like, what is up with that song? Like, why did no one say, hey Bruce, when they were recording it, Bruce, what's up? Because it's like the lyrics, and Pete Holmes goes through the lyrics, and he's like, hey little girl, is your daddy home? Did he go and leave you all alone? And he goes on to talk about, like, a little girl that he's like fascinated with and fantasizing about. And it's a phenomenal song, one of the greatest melodies of all time. And if you look at the lyrics, which I don't think a lot of people really have up until recently, it's creepy, man. It's creepy lyrics. Go and listen to it, and I'll try to put that Pete Holmes clip up with this post on the Patreon. So anyway, awesome question, Josh. All right, Josh has 2 more, and then Charlie Wrighton has a comment, and that's it. Where are we at? We're over an hour, so it's not going to work out this time. Anyway, he says, was recently reading the book The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Hecht about increasing anxiety in the millennials and Gen Z. The author traced the rise of anxiety to parental anxiety starting in the 70s and 80s, as well as the unregulated internet usage in young people, especially around social media, most notably in the 2010s, when a lot of kids got smartphones. I was thinking about this because the other day I got a bottle of vitamins and the seal was broken. I initially blew it off, but then I thought back to childhood with the warnings that people were supposedly putting bad things in Tylenol bottles and razor blades in Halloween candy. My dad, growing up in the 1950s, had never had any concerns about that kind of stuff. But I do remember in school, the teachers would make a point of saying that you would have to have your parents search your candy and take away the stuff that was not wrapped. Most people I've talked to from my generation, Gen X, and my generation as well, remember similar things, but I wonder if this was also regional. So Josh is somewhere in Pennsylvania. Did you have those kinds of warnings in school when you were a kid around Halloween candy? Interesting, man. This is a really interesting question. So, just to break it down, I guess, the anxious generation and the anxiety with newer generations. I've actually been studying a lot of that, especially I think because I became a substitute teacher in February, and I did that this spring, and it just wrapped up a couple weeks ago. And kids today are, they're a mess, and they're gonna be a mess, these generations. And I substituted preschool through 8th grade, so I saw the gamut, the whole spectrum of kids, and they're coddled. They're not told no. They're not told to wait. They're not. I can't stand when it's like when someone says, "Oh, are you having feelings today?" It's like, yeah, aren't you? Like, everybody has feelings all the time. It's so stupid. So that anxiety today, I think, is a product of, like you said, like smartphones, first and foremost, bad parenting. Going from like helicopter parents to hawkish parents to now everybody gets a trophy parent. I think whenever that started was kind of the big de-evolution of our society as far as young generations go. And then the cell phone. There was another guy, I forget who he was, I just saw a clip, I posted in my Instagram stories, where he was talking about ways to fix this kind of thing. And he was like, no cell phones until you're 16. And they've done studies with 18-year-olds who say, the majority say, yeah, they wish that they had never gotten into cell phones and social media because now they can't get out of it. So no cell phones till you're 16. You can give them a flip phone or something that they can contact you with, but that's it. No social media, or I think it was no phone till 14. No social media till 16. Start telling them no, wait, all these things. But then also to give them more freedom in the real world. Let them go out and play. Let them go to their friend's house. Let them go to we don't have malls anymore, but go to the movies or whatever it is. Let them go. But to restrict the freedoms as far as virtual stuff goes, I say thumbs up to all that stuff. Now, going from that into the Tylenol scare of the 80s, that was a real thing. And that was nationwide as far as I know, because it was a factor in Illinois and Chicago suburbs when I was a kid. I remember that. So much so that, I don't think it's a fabricated or unnecessary anxiety where the newer generation stuff kind of is, and it's something that we created. When you're talking about that, like, yeah, that would make me anxious as well. Or even just like, when there's that whole salmonella thing in the late 80s, everybody was anxious about that and worried about chicken. My whole family got it, and it was bad. My dad, my sister, and my brother were all in the hospital. My mom and I had gone to Florida for some reason and didn't get it, and they up here in Chicago were all in the hospital. So those are legit anxieties, and everybody has anxiety, and everybody is anxious from time to time. I think when people talk about, when people say I deal with anxiety, and they say it as something that they have a problem with, well, be more specific and say you have a problem dealing with anxiety, which everybody also, I think, has from time to time. But I have a problem. I have anxiety. Everybody has anxiety about different things. I have a problem dealing with anxiety. I can say that from time to time. Sometimes I can deal with it. I can run it off, go to the gym, meditate, pet my dog, make something, paint, draw, figures, and it'll definitely help with that. Sometimes I can't. Sometimes it results. I've had, I think, 4 panic attacks in my lifetime, maybe 5, that were so big that I was gone, just gone. 2 of them put me in the hospital, and so anxieties are like a real thing, and it can be caused by anything. And I'm not a psychiatrist, but speaking from my own experience, when you have something that's a catalyst like that Tylenol scare, that's legit. And the Halloween candy thing, that's legit. That happened. My dad, though, made it fun. And when we'd come home in St. Charles, I remember it more specifically, because that neighborhood, growing up in the Chicago suburbs, was awesome. And I wish that I had gone through high school there, but we didn't. We moved to the South for high school. But, the growing up the way I did in the suburbs up until 5th grade is when we moved, was get out of the house. Mom, you know, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. Get out of the house, go to school, and then when you get home, go play. Ride your bike, go to the playground, and we did. We'd go to 7-Eleven, and we'd spend our allowance on Garbage Pail Kids cards and candy, and play video games and bike around, and it was awesome. And I'm so thankful for that freedom, even though we could have gotten kidnapped, poisoned, razor blades, run over, hit by a car, whatever. I'm still here, and those things didn't happen. And I think I think it's not just luck that kind of stuff didn't happen, given that freedom. I think it's just like awareness and the fact that like those bad things are very rare, but they exist, and that's the point of this whole thing, is that those are legit concerns. But what do? Do you coddle a kid? Do you put them in a bubble? Do you never tell them no, or never tell them to wait, or whatever? Those are all the wrong things. You tell them to go, live your life. You know, COVID is a great example of sort of the modern day, you know, messed with people in so many ways, myself included. But it's over. It's still out there, but that pandemic is over. So go to the theaters, go do the things you want to do. Stop wearing your mask, walking around outside. That's ignorant, period. It didn't work, you know, there was no point to that back during the pandemic, even though we thought there was. There's definitely no point to it now. So, you know, start living life, because we're going to have another pandemic of some kind eventually, probably very soon. And we're not going to be able to live life again. So do it now. Yeah, but anyway, getting back to the Halloween candy, my dad would make it fun. And we'd come home, great suburbs, great neighborhoods, tons of candy. Come home with these giant bags of it. First thing he does is, all right, put it on the floor. We'd dump it all on the floor. And he'd look through it, looking for stuff like that, but not like scouring it. He'd just like look through it, you know, move it around, stuff like that. But he always did say, it was almost like a reverse psychology or something, or I don't know, something. He'd be like, all right, I need to try that and that and that because they look poisoned. And he'd take what he wanted, which was always his favorite stuff: Snickers, Kit Kat, and Nestle Crunch. Those were his 3 big ones. So he'd take what he wanted, eat them, and be like, "Yep, I think they're okay." He just got our candy, and which was all he really wanted. But at the same time, he was checking it. He was caring about us, and that was his way of being a responsible parent, you know. And because that was a legit scare, and he wasn't just. My parents weren't going to just, that's garbage. Don't worry about it, or it's unlikely to happen, or whatever. You know, they partook in the safety side of it, but they didn't overdo it, and they didn't create anxiety about it. You know, why does everything need to be that? So anyway, I love this question, Josh. Thank you. Josh Blum, last one. He says, speaking of Halloween, did you go around your neighborhood by yourself when you were a kid for Halloween? I did, but the time my brother started trick-or-treating in the mid-90s, the attitude was the parents should go with the kids. I think I ended up fulfilling that role because of the age gap. I was 8 years older, and would typically go around the neighborhood with him until he got tired. Most of the time there were other parents around, which is not something I remember from my own childhood. Once Halloween fell on a Saturday, and I went around the whole neighborhood with the girl down the street, and we got 2 pillowcases full of candy. I don't recall my brother ever having this experience just 10 years later. That's awesome, and I kind of mushed my answers for this into that last one. I absolutely did. When we went around for Halloween, like I was just talking about, I have pictures. It was me and my brother, and then usually a friend. And I have pictures of me, my brother, and a friend. And that was it. My parents didn't go. They waited. They let us. They were probably glad to have a couple hours to themselves on some evening or whenever it fell on. And yeah, you know, like we went out, we did Halloween. We weren't trying to we weren't looking for trouble. We weren't looking for something that we could get away with. We loved Halloween, and all we wanted to do was trick or treat. Tradition. We're big on traditions in my family, and St. Charles, man, was just. I did it in other towns when we lived there, but St. Charles was just the best. You know, I'd ride my bike to school, would walk all over the place, like I said, 7-Eleven and Garbage Pail Kids. But for Halloween, it was like premium. Every kid was out. And I always liken it to the scene in E.T. when they go trick-or-treating, and, you know, E.T.'s the ghost. Right here. Look at that guy. Here we go, wait. One of my favorite toys. Two of my favorite toys of all time. Look at these guys. That light is really washing stuff out. Anyway, I hope you can see these. Move them over here. Yeah. Such amazing toys. So the scene in E.T. when they go trick-or-treating and E.T. passes a kid dressed as Yoda, and he's like, home, 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 and tries to follow him up. That was very similar to my experience in St. Charles. We'd go out, and back then I feel like it got darker earlier, and we had fun, and we were dressed up, and got tons of candy. And from what I remember, and maybe this didn't happen every year, but I know it happened at least a couple years, my parents let us stay home from school if it was on a school night the next day, because they let us eat our candy, not all of it, but they let us eat almost as much as we wanted. We'd watch movies. It was just so good. I almost want to cry, but because I miss it so much, and I haven't done that in years. Because as much as I love Chicago, Halloween here in the city is just slutty bee costumes and garbage, like the, you know, bar hopping. That's not for me. But I have been able to go out to my brothers and trick or treat, or hand out candy. Sorry, where he lives in the suburbs here. I've done that a couple times. Seems like he's always lived in a neighborhood, even when he was in the city, that was more conducive to trick-or-treaters. So I usually try to find a place that I can go like that and at least hand out candy. But trick-or-treating has changed, you know? And now it's like, if it doesn't fall on the weekend, they go on some weekday, because it's either more convenient for the parents, or it's that like safety concern. I don't know. It's dumb. It's like, have Halloween on Halloween, you know? And just do it upright. So let's see, trick-or-treat, mid-90s. Yeah. Parent thing, like I said, my parents never went. Never. Maybe early when we were like toddlers, like little tiny toddlers. But they were really good. My parents were really good about engaging us in traditional kid stuff and letting us be kids as long as we wanted to be a kid. I didn't get in, you know, I was into kid stuff, as opposed to like girls or hanging out with my dude friends, you know, being bros and dudes, until I was like 14 or 15, 16. And see, even still today, I haven't, you know, I'm still into like the things that make me happy. And I'm, you know, unashamed or unabashed of, that's not the right word to use, no, unapologetic, you know, of the things that I love and that I spend my time on. It's all stuff that I love to do as a kid, and I love that. I love that I'm still able to do that. So, Josh, I hope that answers your question. Let me just scan it. Neighbor by yourself when you was a kid. Okay, yeah. And then the other thing fell on Saturday. Yeah, I feel like a lot of the time it fell on a weekday. But like I said, we got to stay home. at least a couple times. So that's a blast. Josh, thank you for all your questions. You guys make sure you go check out Josh's podcast, 13th Hour podcast. I'm on like 20 of them or something, but listen to all of them. Josh has a great podcast, and he interviews some amazing guests, like actors and stuff. It's really good. The last thing isn't a question so much as a comment from Charlie Wrighton, and he's answering my prompt, your favorite 80s high school movie. And he says, I had to think about it. My Science Project was my favorite, so bonkers, but it captured my imagination, and I saw it after reading X-Men Fall of the Mutants, which had so many parallels. That's awesome. I still have my Fall of the Mutants poster in the kitchen here, hanging on the wall. It's probably my favorite, at least one of my favorite comic book art pieces is that poster where all the mutants are laying in this like line on the ground, like they're defeated in the desert. So great, so iconic. And My Science Project, dude, I can't believe you said that, and I'm so happy that you did, because that's one of those 80s staples that I completely forgot about. I think the last time I saw it was probably like 20 years ago, maybe even more. I've seen it since I was a kid. I used to watch it all the time as a kid. I've seen it since, but I haven't seen it in a while. And when I read that you typed that, I was like, My Science Project? What is that? I know that. And then I watched the trailer, and Dennis Hopper is the villain, and that guy, I can't remember his name, but you recognize him. Just a great 80s movie poster. What a great poster. And yeah, the parallels to Fall of the Mutants I can see those. I'm gonna have to rewatch the movie. But so cool, man. I'm gonna put the trailer in this post with that. So, and great pick. Great, like, out of the box pick. I always put that movie, it's like the perfect Saturday afternoon movie, along with I recommend a double feature of My Science Project and The Wraith, 1986 Charlie Sheen. Excellent. And I showed these off last week, but my Turbo Death figure that I sculpted and never released, it's The Wraith. It's an homage to The Wraith. But yeah, Charlie, thank you so much. That was awesome. And thank everybody let me just name everybody: Charlie Wright and Josh Blum, Charlie Gushy, and Brent Barnacle. Thank you so much, you guys, for your questions. You filled up the show. We're at an hour and a half, similar to the other 2 episodes that have made it to video so far. And again, this will be available just audio or video. So whichever one you guys want. That's how I'm doing it from now on for you guys on Patreon. If you want to join the Patreon, it's patreon.com/Adam Crohn. That's me, ADAMCROHN. You can join for as little as $2 a month. That entitles you to ask me anything on this podcast. It entitles you to this podcast post, which is exclusive. It'll have all the pictures and links and everything I talk about in the show. Only accessible on Patreon. Behind the scenes, tutorials, work in progress, giveaways, discounts to my shop and everything that I make in my store. What else? All kinds of stuff. I mean, we're constantly we do our meetups every Halloween. We do a meetup in St. Charles with anybody who's local. So all that kind of stuff. Thank you guys. And if you're just on YouTube and you're on my channel and you're watching this, thank you for being here, for spending time with us. And yeah, I think that's about it. What time is it? 11:21, 81 degrees in my apartment. I'm going to turn off all these lights, get something cold to drink, and sit down with my dog and my cat and just kind of like fall asleep. That's what's going on. Thank you for being here, folks. I will see you in the next one. I'm going to do a thumbs up, a nice D&D thumbs up, which would be kind of like, let's go with pow. Is that good? Sabang. How about that one? All right. Thank you guys. Be safe. Do something for your community. Be a community player. That is so important, so important, so important. I like to end all my podcasts on a positive, productive note. Real quick, I'll leave you guys with this. There's a lot of homeless guys in my neighborhood. I was talking with my favorite guy. His name's Juan. Some people call him the Tan Man. Some people call him the Hispanic Santa Claus because he's a Hispanic guy with this giant white beard, mega tan, because he walks around all day without a shirt, and the guy looks like leather. Anyway, walking leather. I was talking with him today, and he was like, I told him what I was going through, which I'm going to talk about later. I don't want to get into it now. But he was like, man, you're going to figure this out. And we were talking about how long we've each been a part of this neighborhood and this community. I've been here for about 17 years. He's been here for 12. And how much we love it. And we're both coming from two almost polar opposite ends of experience, the experience spectrum of living in this neighborhood. He's homeless. I'm not. He's, super like dependent on the elements and people's goodness and kindness to exist. And he gave me some advice today that was just like, man, that's something that somebody, in your position to tell me. I was so grateful. It was so gracious of him. So he's part of my community. I love that he is, and I love him, and he's great. And as little as he has, he's still putting it out. He's still putting it out there and doing something for the community that he lives in, whether he's homeless or not. I mean, he is. He's still being a part of it, a positive part of it. So do that. If Juan can do it, we can do it, right? So anyway, be safe on top of that. Come back for the next one. I'll see you guys on Patreon. Thank you so much. Adios. Thank you, guys. Sit, Muji, sit. Good dog.